about Samudghata, and there have been 7 types of Samudghata. So which is the last one or the first one of the first one? Any remember? Do you remember any other Samudghata we discussed already? Yeah? Exam नहीं ले रहे हैं आपका?
Like anger. Anger was one of
Exactly. Anger, kashaya, I mean
Yeah,
overall.
kashaya.
Emotions. So Samudghata is a concept where the soul leaves the body partially, not completely, in the living state and returns back. So when it goes partially, there is an involvement of some or the other reason why it is going. And based on different aspects of it, we have 7 types of them. And we have the Samudghata can happen because of emotional pressure, it could happen because of pain, it could happen because of near-death experience. I mean, the person who is about to die actually reaches a new birthplace. So these 3 were projections of Samudghata, which is just happening because of some karmic pressure. It's not like great self-effort, it just happens. And then we discussed about 3 which one can use labdhi, power. You know, some special power you have, and then you can create a new body, astral body or astral travel body, and then reach to the destination, do something which you're targeting, and then return back. So there are 3 of them: Tejas Samudghata, Vaikriya Samudghata, and Ahara Samudghata. And these are all special, power oriented. Now there is a 7th one, which is actually the most unique of all 7, is Kevali Samudghata. Why it's unique? Because it's done by a Kevali, right? And who is a Kevali? What is the definition of Kevali? Enlightened being. Simple understanding is Bhagwan, right? Kevali means Bhagwan. And Bhagwan means who is enlightened, who knows everything. But if you go into the subtle meaning of, karmic definition of Kevali, what would it be? What is the status of Kevali in a karmic context?
They finish their Kati karma and to finish their Kati karma they have to
come back.
No, they don't have to come back.
They
That's the last life.
They have to do
They have
the
to
Samudghata.
finish. Yes.
Yeah.
So we in Jain philosophy have 8 types of karmas. 4 are called Ghati karma and 4 is Aghati karma. So when we talk about Ghati karma, what are the Ghati karma? Jnanavarniya, Darshanavarniya, Mohaniya, and Antaraya. Yeah, so these are the karmas which actually pollutes the soul, which actually obstructs your power, the power of the soul. And this 4 has been got rid of by the Kevali, by an enlightened being. So this gives an assurance once you've got rid of moha or mohaniya karma or jnanavarniya karma, it is an assurance you're liberating the same life. It's not that liberation will happen someday, but this life guaranteed. Now, even when this karma has been, one has got rid of these 4, there is 4 remaining. And the 4 is Vedaniya, which gives pleasure and pain experience. And then Nama, which is Nama karma, is because Nama karma gives us the body. And Gotra karma gives us the status. And then Ayusha karma, the age rendering karma. So even after one has attained enlightenment, one lives in that enlightened state for how long?
Until these Kati karmas are destroyed.
Yes, and in simple terms, until their Ayusha doesn't finish. So every one of us, we come with a lifespan. And even a person who's about to liberate in the same life, they have their lifespan set. And their lifespan cannot be changed. I mean, there are 2 kinds of lifespan, where some lifespan one could actually change, and the other one is, it cannot change. So the lifespan of, like for example, someone is traveling, some accident happened, the death was not about to happen then, but it could happen because of that accident. So there you see that the lifespan is, the probability of lifespan changing is there. But again, changing, when I say change, one cannot expand the lifespan more than what it is decided. It can be expedited. Because then you need shortcut, fast track. So someone might go through a fast track in this context. But those whose life is the last life in this world, right? Last life in this world, their lifespan is static, it is fixed, it doesn't change. It cannot expand, it cannot be expedited. Now, when this is the situation, we also see that there is 4 karmas, and of the 4, we know that we are going to live until our lifespan is remaining. But the karmic baggage which are the 3 remaining, Vedaniya, Namkarma and Gotrakarma, do we have that treasure equally there, equal to the age? So suppose you have to live in a country and you have 10 days, and each day it's going to cost you like 100 pounds or whatever, and if you have 1,000 pounds, you can stay for 10 days, isn't it? So each day you have set amount you have to pay, and there's a total duration. But suppose you say, no, I don't want to stay for 10 days, I'm going to go in 5 days. You might choose to get rid of those 1,000 pounds and use it and enjoy it quickly. You could do that. But suppose you have more, you could use it. Like if you have 2,000 pounds and you have 10 days, that's not a problem, isn't it? It's going to be more fun. Yeah? But in case of karma, how does that work? What does it mean?
Life, because of the time limit of how long you will live, that you cannot change, isn't it? So that's why you have to balance the
In
other
case
things.
of the vacation thing, as I mentioned, suppose there is a rule that when you come back, you have to have an empty pocket. Then, is it still fun? Sometimes little stressful. Why? Sometimes there is a company giving you a trip, this thing, and then they say that this is your package, you could use this much, and then you start thinking, okay, where else can I use it? What else can I do, right? You want to use that money that way. Here in case of karma, there is a time duration of, for example, 10 years or 20 years after enlightenment, whatever duration is. And suppose the karmic baggage is more, you have to pay back the karma fastly. So suppose we change the example to paying back some loan. You have taken a loan and you have to pay back in 10 years. You say, okay, every year I'm going to do this much and get rid of it. But suppose you say, no, I'm to get rid of it in like 5 years. Or if the loan is more than what you could do in 10 years, you're earning less, you need to pay more. How do you do it?
Take a second job.
This is what the Kevali is doing. They are taking a different route to get rid of their karma. It's very simple. Yeah? And what is that? So they actually, when their lifespan is in the last stage, 48 minutes lifespan remaining, in that time period, there's a special process which happens inside. It's called Avarjikaran. Avarjikaran is actually meaning you're facing liberation, which means, we are all facing liberation. Are we facing liberation? Are we heading towards liberation?
Hope so.
Hope so. Women are saying hope so. How about the others?
We are trying. It's in process.
Process, man. So we have the hope, right? Faith that you're heading towards that. Jैसे होता है ना कि there was a lady. She had friends. She was in US. She had friends from India, so they all thought, let us go and have like a ride. And their place was near like Mexico border. So she drove, but she drove in a wrong direction or something, and then they actually ended up near the border. And then they thought, when we have reached almost here, why don't we just go and have a trip inside? They didn't have the when you realize that there is a wrong direction, but still what happens, the temptation of going into the other way, you say, okay, anyway we have done this much, why don't you finish it? So that temptation is always there. But the key thing is, when we have become a Kevali, there is no way out, that you're in the possibility of being in the wrong direction or wrong place is, you got out of that trap. You're already assured that you are going to liberate. So the only thing is, what is the second way out, second job which one could do to make sure that you have enough to pay back your karma. So So one is when avarjikana process happens, they actually try to sort out. They shuffle the karma such that all the karmas are kind of like balanced out. Balanced out in the sense, for example, if I have too much of gotra karma and less vednya karma and Ayusha karma is again less, so there could be an imbalance of which one to pay how much. If there is 4 kinds of debts and one is more and the other one is less, you want to make sure that you pay all in time to leave the country. Because even if one of them is missing, you cannot actually work it out. So the process of shuffling happens to make sure that, okay, if this is more, I could just do a balance by taking this helping hand from, somehow you sort it out. You give some chunk of this to the other person and stuff like that, you kind of work out. But even if that process of simple reshuffling doesn't help, then you go for Kevali Samudghata. And what happens in this is there are 2 possibilities. One is sitting or standing. There are 2 ways of happening this. The soul projects out in the form of a pillar. And pillar in the sense, one stretch, the soul expands as a pillar from in the upward direction and the lower direction. And it reaches the end of the universe. So in a way, the soul is actually in the form of a whole pillar in this whole universe. Then the pillar actually expands into a form of a wall. So it was like this, and then it expands to becoming like a wall. And this wall then expands towards to other 4 directions. So how many steps did I say? 3? The last step is where if there is any other corners of the universe which is still empty, which has not been reached yet, the soul takes another step to fill in these corners. So in 4 moments, 4 nano moments or 4 samay, 4 unit of time, the soul is in the whole universe. And this is the only moment when we say that the soul is omnipresent in the whole universe. In that state, the soul sheds the karma and then the reversal happens. Reversal would be the soul from the empty spaces contracts, and then the soul from the third step comes to second step to first step, and the soul is back into the body. And after a short time, the soul will be liberating. So this is a mechanism where the soul, whether it chooses or does, it just happens. And within nanoseconds, the soul is sheds off a big chunk of karma. And the karma which one sheds is considered to be the biggest matter. We all see that there are different kinds of sizes, right, of matter. It could be a small pen, big pen. And sometimes, some people have they create an icon in a place, and there's a huge pen they've made as a showpiece in their vicinity. We might find different sized buildings, which is the biggest matter in the universe, if I put it this way. Is there any way we could see there's the biggest matter? Biggest thing in the world?
Meru Parvat? Oh.
Meru Parvat, okay, anything else you can think from the current world?
Everest.
So for us, Everest, if you just see, and that's the biggest mountain, and no mountain, I think that should be the biggest in a way. And if you go by Jain geography, there is a Mount Meru, which is considered to be one of the biggest mountains. But here, when the soul expands, the karma is actually material, isn't it? The material karma sheds, and that forms that matter is in the whole universe as one piece. It's not like broken off instantly, and that becomes the biggest matter called Achit Mahaskand at that time. Now there's a question being asked to Bhagwan, can we see that big matter? And he said, no, you can't see it. So you might see Mount Everest, you could see Mount Meru, but not this. So in a way, even this shows the Jain theory of matter, that matter could be visible and not tangible to our senses. I mean, there is wind blowing here, but we cannot see it. So it's beyond our senses. Even when it's beyond our senses, but there is a presence of it, right? We agree that there is something. And so when we talk about big and small, it need not be based on visibility or tangibility of it. Even the intangible or beyond our senses, there could be something which is huge. I mean, sometimes you think if it is small, we cannot see it. If it's big, we can see it. So the theory of small as not visible, atom is small, you can't see it. That's not the theory here. I mean, even huge can be intangible because it's the nature is actually, it has a subtle existence, and it has subtle qualities which doesn't make us, we cannot see it basically. I mean, like for example, there is, if you see any liquid in the microscope, right? There's so many animals, I mean, so many different kinds of life forms which move around in the water, which becomes visible. I mean, they might be big in size, but it's not like just because they are, it's just that it's not visible to us because of some changes.
So just to clarify, what is the significance of big? In Jainism, we say that matter cannot be created, neither destroyed. So
Yeah.
therefore, what is the significance of big?
No, it's not like significant in the sense, it's just the theory that there is it is just trying to convey the concept of reality the way we understand it, in the sense that matter is not created or not destroyed, it's existing, and it could take, like for example, the matter which makes this pen was not the way it was, right? Someone actually processed it in the factory or in the industry to shape this way. So there could be certain matter which is formed by, which could take shape, form because of some intervention by some human being or any other being. I mean, any being could regulate matter to different forms and shapes and sizes. The other thing is there are certain matter which is naturally in that way. It is just naturally there in that, I mean, it's naturally going through change, or it's naturally going through some transformation. So, for example, a book gets old even without having done anything to it. So there could be natural change in matter because of natural laws, or it could be changed because of someone making it happen. So in one thing we all understand is that every matter has touch, taste, smell. These are the basic qualities which any matter would have it. So with that we know that every matter has it, but then there could be subtle matters, gross matter, and even in one matter it could be like for example cotton and the book. There could be a big cotton ball and there could be a small book. But when we look into the atomic nature of in the cotton, they're more loosely bound, isn't it? And in the book, it is more concentrated matter. So this theory of matter is actually discussed in elaboration in all these contexts, basically. I mean, so in a way, it's about the reality of the world. If you put it in the simple language, the science of the nature is being talked about in Jaina metaphysics in a way. So, am I getting clear? Did I answer your question?
I think you're just saying that essentially it's just a process. It's just something that happens. There's no significance to it.
No significance in its sense that it's not that I'm using it to do something, or it's going to help me arrange a party time or using that. I mean, it's not like something benefiting your life or not benefiting. It's not about that. It's about the nature of reality. And so, for example, when science says, "Oh, this is atom," what is the significance of knowing the atom for you?
So you can use it. I mean,
How
humans have been known to exploit these things, and therefore they use the technology to exploit it.
So here, so Jain theory doesn't talk about, is not framed in the context of exploitation in a way. I mean, it talks about the way reality is, it talks about the nature of reality, it talks about the science behind what we see, rather than saying, oh, it's useful for me and it's not useful for me. No, I mean, it just talks about this is the way the world is. So we're talking about truth, the nature of the truth, truth of the nature, rather than what's good for me or what's, I mean, not about like.
But even in kind of karmic scenario, I don't see any use or any benefit of knowing about that.
Good. I mean, you could actually, there are many, I'll just come to you. There are many things which you would think that if by knowing that there is this whole thing, does it help me liberate? Simple question, right?
Yeah.
Will it help me say that, okay, I'm going to liberate quickly by just knowing that there is a chit mask or there is matter or stuff? Two ways of looking at it. Ultimately, you have to close your eyes, train your mind to discipline and meditate on yourself. And that's the ultimate. So for that, you don't need to know a chit mask. But then we are not all trained to shut down ourselves and just explore our inner journey like Mahavir and other Tirthankars and great men did. So we all have different approaches to grow in spirituality. So for example, someone would actually grow in spirituality by understanding the nature of the universe. That the nature is abundant, there is a lot in there, and by understanding the nature of the world, I realize that I'm such a petty thing. What am I being egoistic about? Like, the whole idea of you could actually dissolve your ego by looking into the nature of the reality, or you could help yourself detach by understanding the nature of the reality. So we can intellectually help ourselves to grow by understanding all these concepts. So at some point it could help us either detach or and the other way of looking at it is, at least when you're engrossed in the process of knowing is actually a pure state of being. It's a state where you try to say, okay, I'm not, at least for now, half an hour or 1 hour, you would not be thinking about your job or a business or your credit card or all that stuff which pulls you into stress in the world. So you take an initiative by engaging into the process of knowledge or knowing to stop your worldly engagements. So that way you're trying to disconnect from the world by connecting from something. Because if I say just read the Acharang and think about the soul, someone is not actually already there. You're in the process and you might be not ready to take that lesson that way. So these other theories and concepts, one thing is gives us an understanding of the nature of the reality, and the second thing is it helps us engage into something about truth rather than about the mindness and what's good for me and all that stuff, which helps us just pull back into the stressful world. So it helps us be in a pure state and think about what it is rather than what I can gain more. So we are all trained into what I can get out of it. But can I just see what is, what exists, the isness of the world, the existence of the world, the nature of the world. So coming to isness rather than what I can, like wantingness thing. Oh, yeah, we had 2 questions, but yeah, sure, very well.
At our level, human level, there is a constant interplay between what is gross and what is subtle.
Yes.
I mean,
so the
we see the
definition,
gross, whatever is around you. At a subtle level, if the gross changes in shape and form, you process it and your subtle faculties take over and make a judgment. For example, why the book has changed.
Yes.
And then the reality comes in, or the truth about it, why it has changed or not, or you just become an observer and just accept it. It has
Yes,
changed.
so that's a good point, and adding to that, the definition of gross and subtle actually changes at some point. I mean, everything is relative. For me, gross is not just which is visible. Even the biggest achitmastan could be big. I mean, when it is big, you could say it as gross. So the relativity thing, that how do you define what is subtle and what is gross, could be actually relative to different dravya kshetra kalbhav. I mean, there are different aspects which could be defined. Yes, you have something.
In terms of karmic bondage, I mean, Kevalis would not bind any karmas at that time. That's number one. And number two, I mean, when it comes to the disintegration of the matter that's created, would other beings, other souls, be harmed in any?
Very good question. So, the first thing you said was that you mentioned first.
There is no karmic bondage as far as Kevali goes, because this is only Samudghata. It has no karmic bondage.
Yes. So you get back to our last discussions which we've had in last sessions. In one of my sessions, I did mention that all the 6 samudghats which one does, because of the expansion process itself, the subtle microbes in the universe which is there could get hurt and killed, or hurt at least. Now when the attempt is done by Kevali, wouldn't that happen? I mean, wouldn't it be the same case? Now that's the reason, because of this reason, I think that, or I believe that according to some, the Kevali Samudghata is not done, it just happens. So I don't make an effort to do it, to expand myself into the cosmos and shed the karma. It would just happen because of the karmic pressure, because of the karmic nature which it is there at that time. The reason this is important is because if one does, and if there is violence, then one should be responsible for that violence. So since it is a requisite process, one is not responsible for anything just happening at that time as a karmic bondage. The other side of it is, a Kevali is actually enlightened, and so any action one does, what kind of bondage one has? There are 2 kinds of bondage. So which one does the Kevali have?
Idiopathic.
Very good. So there are 2 types of karmic bondage, sampradayik and idiopathic. So any action we do have an emotional baggage behind it. So based on intensity of emotion, the bondage is more intense or less. So a person is actually just doing nothing, just doing the cleaning of the room, but is doing it with intense emotions, the bondage would be too intense. And a person might be doing a lot of, might be going into the war, but the person is doing with less emotional rage, the karmic bondage would actually be less. So emotions actually define the nature of our karma, its intensity, its baggage. So that's the reason we say that when you take care, when you live, can you live like a nanny? The nanny who takes care of the kid. So mother and nanny both are taking care of the kid. What's the difference? They both serve the child, they both teach the child, they both take care of the child equally in a way. But still, what's the difference?
The nanny is not attached in any way.
Yeah.
Mother is.
So the mother always thinks that the child is mine, and there is always this relationship and mineness. But nanny, she thinks, okay, this is my job, I have to do it, and she does it with full loyalty, with full faith, full right way. But ultimately, at the end of the day, she knows that she has to leave. So
What if they get attached to it?
it's attachment. There are sometimes actually they get attached with, surrogate mothers.
Yeah.
Sometimes the mother, they offer to be the surrogate, and at the end of the time they change their mind. So you never know. Here, when we do any action, our attachment, we all are having some or the degree of attachment, so the karmic baggage is going to be more intense. The karmic bondage is going to be intense. We can of course try to be the nanny more, the best we can basically. it's not easy, because the moment you do all the work in the home, at the end of the day, you say that I did it, they should appreciate me, I'm constantly working for everyone, you like start having all those me, I did it, and like, what is all this? It's all about the ego or mindness or the expectations. Everything is all emotional world. So try to drop them and work towards it. Kevali has already dropped it. So when Kevali does any action, there is no emotional baggage attached to it. So for example, there is a wall, you throw sand on it. If it's dry walls, the sand doesn't stay, it just falls. Similarly for a Kevali, since a dry wall, no emotion is already there, when they perform any action, for example, they are helping thousands of people to liberate. It's a big action, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So they should be getting the chunk of, like, biggest chunk of punya for themselves. But they don't actually accumulate too much of karma, because when they do this, they do it with detachment, and the karma comes, it touches the soul, and it leaves. So the bondage is idiopathic, where it is just the 2-moment bondage. The incoming, the touching the soul, and shedding off. So even when they're doing the Kevali Samudghata, it's the same state, in the sense that they wouldn't have any kind of intense bondage, which we as people of emotions have it. So by default, the question of karmic bondage, anything different from idiopathic, is ruled out. Right? I mean, there's no chance of it, because their state is pure. And I'll give you another example of how it's described. Is when we are walking, right? We are careful of walking, and we make sure that we don't step on the grass, we don't step on bugs and all that stuff. But have you ever noticed that even while you're walking very carefully, you're observing it, but still sometimes something comes up?
Yes.
Who is responsible for that? Are you responsible for that violence?
Yes.
Yes, okay, Bharat Bhai says yes. Anyone else?
No, if you don't have an intention, you shouldn't. That's what my Bhagwan said.
So basically intention is not there, and awareness.
Yeah.
You didn't intend it, but if you had negligence, for example, you threw a knife in the air. You didn't have intention to hurt any animal there, but then you didn't have awareness. So awareness and intention both is equally important for any kind of this thing. So here when Bhagwan is walking, he is fully aware of the, he has Keval Jnana, right? So he knows which bugs are there on the earth where. And even with that, one cannot actually control the world, action or happening in the world to the most subtlest degree. Like for example, so they have their own limitation of controlling things. They have the knowledge about it, but they cannot actually control it. So if there is any hurt of any subtle being, since they are aware, they don't intend to do anything wrong, they wouldn't bind the karma. So there is a possibility of violence while one is walking. These subtle microbes are there everywhere, and the hurt is possible. So even there, they're not responsible for, in the sense they're not binding the karma for that action.
Sometimes they say, you accrue sins or sins through your actions of mind, speech, and body, knowingly or unknowingly. So
unknowingly matlab ignorance, no? Right? What do you mean unknowingly?
Awareness, don't say.
Lack of awareness or because of ignorance. So one said something unknowingly. For example, one gave a comment in a group, and they didn't realize that there was some other person there who would take it wrongly or differently, and that was not to be said. This happens, for example, a person from Indian culture comes to a British or an American culture, and there could be certain things which is not okay to be said in that way, so they didn't have wrong intention, but it's ignorance. It's their ignorance about this culture. And then you end up into doing things because of some, so it is our incompleteness which is making us do all that stuff, isn't it? If you have been a complete being, then in the gross world, in the world of interaction, you would actually perform the right way. Like for example, the wife serves the food and there is no salt in the food. What happens? You could choose to start complaining instantly, but then you could choose to just smile and say, "Can I have salt, please?" Right, with patience and smile. So you are aware of it and you do it consciously, and you could consciously regulate your actions. So there is an ability to control your emotions and take care of it. But the baggage, the problem of ignorance is actually still there with us, or the problem of emotions actually to some degree goes with us. So yeah, yes.
Can I share a practical example about intention?
Shortly, because
No.
yeah.
Okay, next week.
No, you could go with short, yeah.
About 2 weeks back, I was on a jury service,
Mm-hmm.
and the accused was carrying a knife, which is illegal,
Mm-hmm.
and he had broken the law.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a long story going back few days back, and which led him to carry the knife.
Mm-hmm.
So once everything was done, defense and prosecutors and witnesses and all that, all the jurors went into the private room, and 4 of them said, he's guilty because he had broken the law. And we deliberated, and the ultimate answer was his intention was not to hurt anyone. It was something else which happened, which led him to do that, and he was looking for protection. But police fixed him into prosecution, you see. So it's the intention, you see. Though the law says one thing, intention is different.
I think knife gang should just be banned. I'm saying that totally. He should have been sentenced.
No. I haven't told the whole story.
Thank God, like government. I'll come back to my own topic. Yeah? My serious question for you is, why do you think there is an imbalance of karma? Why the karma is in an imbalanced state? Shouldn't it be balanced?
Don't understand that question.
Okay, so basically we have 4 karmas: Ram karma, Vedana karma, Gotra karma, and Ayusha karma. And we said that the Kevali does the Samudghata because there is an imbalance of karma, in the sense that there could be more Vedana karma, less Ayusha karma, or one is more and the other one is less. So why is there this imbalance?
Because when you're shedding karmas, it's always, some of the karmas will be shed off, some will not be.
Some
Like-
karmas would be?
Will shed off. And some, just when you bind karmas, they will go into the various states, like our Ghati karma will affect different faculties. In a similar way, when we shed karmas, the same thing will happen.
No, so for example, we have our age is, for example, Bhagwan Mahavir, right? When did he get enlightenment? What age?
72.
72 was his liberation age.
Oh.
I mean, the time he liberated. And
42.
42 to 72, 30 years of lifespan he had to live as a Kevali, as a Tirthankar, of course. So when he lived in that time, and when he left the world, he made sure that his Ram karma is exhausted, his Vedana karma is got rid of, the Gotra is got rid of, and the Ayush is completed. And we say that all these karmas, when we get rid of them, at the final stage, it happens in the same moment. Which means you have to finish all, you cannot say, okay, I'm going to finish paying back one type of bill today and the other tomorrow. The completion of all this should happen in the same moment. So you cannot say, I'm going to get rid of one debt at one time and the other at the other time. You might do it eventually, but final stage, final completion at the same time. So when we say this, it has to happen in the same time. It is important that they should have always been, the final expiry date should be the same, right? Otherwise, if one expires early, you cannot still live in the world. It should expire on the same day. Now the reason why there could be an imbalance of this is because constantly we are binding karmas. And when we bind the karmas, we actually don't bind the karma equally. So the theory of karma is that we have 8 karmas, right? Of the 8, when we bind karmas, the age rendering karma, the lifespan karma is bound only once in a lifetime. So what will you be in your next life? Have you already decided?
Yes.
Yes? Kevali,
I karma will decide it. I don't know where.
But your age is decided.
For the next life, yes.
When did you decide it?
I mean, I won't know. If I don't.
If you plan for your vacation, you know where you're going and with whom you're traveling, isn't it? But in case of this, no idea. So don't attach too much with your current family. You don't know who new family will be there in your next life anyway. So
No advance booking.
advance booking. When we talk about this next life karma being bound, we actually bound when 2/3 of our life is finished and 1/3 is remaining. And as I mentioned, I think even earlier, that when the 1/3 is remaining, for example, if one has a lifespan of 90 years, 60 years passed off, 30 years remaining, then you bind the new next life age. But if you miss at that time, the next 30 years, you spend 20 years and then you bind the next life karma. And so in a way, you could actually go and that can keep on going until the last, for example, the last 3 days of your life, even there is a chance of binding the karma, next life karma, even at, the last hour also probably. So the reason why I bring this is that it binds in one time, and that the time it gets bind completely, there is no change to it. But we're not binding it every moment or every day. And by default, we really don't know whether we've already bound the karma of next life or no, because you don't know whether you're going to bind, you've already bound, or it could happen the next phase of your life. Now, when it comes to this other karmas, when the other karmas is constantly being bound, we have the incoming karmas. So, for example, there are 1,000 karmas, which is, we actually bind infinite karmas every moment. If there is, for example, 1,000, we take in the 1,000, and what is the share which goes to each of the karmas? So, Vedaniya karma, the Nam karma, Gotra karma, all these karmas which is there, how much of the share goes to which karma? Is it equal or unequal?
Unequal.
Unequal. So what is the percentage? Anyone actually knows about it? So we actually get the biggest share goes to Vedaniya karma. So for example, you have the income in the house, right? You get you get paid in your job, and you get the money. So how much do you think goes to the do you have equal distribution of the money in the house?
No.
Who has the biggest share?
School fees.
Me.
Me? School fees. Kids share. Okay, so here in our case it is Vedaniya karma. Why Vedaniya karma needs a bigger share? Because every moment we are experiencing pleasure and pain. Either of them. No matter what, even if it is sunny, you have a response. Oh, it's good. Even if it's windy, you have a pleasure or pain experience. You either have this or that experience. Whatever you are engaging into it, the 5 senses actually, there is a constant pleasure, pain condition traveling with us. Whether you eat, whether you sleep, whether the bed is soft, whether it's hard, whether the weather is what, or the dress is, anything you touch or see, there is a relationship, or there is a feeling of pleasure and pain. So the biggest experience, biggest thing which we go through in our life is not emotions, it's pleasure and pain. The share of the karma which goes next is to Mohaniya karma, which is the world of emotion. But our pleasure pain actually has a backup of emotion. When the emotions are positive, you like things, and if the emotions are negative, you don't like it. You have the experience of defining something as pleasurable or painful depending on your emotion, isn't it? Someone might like the sunny day, and then because your emotions are attached to it, you say it is pleasure. But for some others, it could be painful. So pain and pleasure are relative. It's relative based on your emotion. But ultimately, of course, we say that there is a pain in the body and stuff. That we understand that there is Vedana is there. But ultimately, if we can control or be aware of our pleasure and pain complex and try to be neutral in that, it is big part of our life, we can actually balance it. What is samatha? To be neutral, to be balanced. And how do you say, where do we have to be balanced? Forget about like big things, like big opportunities, like big occasions in life, like someone's kids, some child got accomplished into the medical school, and you have a big joy, big party time. You have a marriage occasion or any big or small celebrations of the life, right? We have a response to it, emotional response to it. But forget about those big opportunities or big occasions of life. Even the smallest thing, you made a juice and you say, oh, it's very tasty.
That's it.
Right? Small things of life, can we shut down our emotional response to it? Can you just say neutral? Can you be in samatha? Can you just say no pleasure, no pain? I'm not saying of not appreciating someone about what they are doing and stuff. It's about my inner response to the situation. It's very different, right? When you eat something, when someone has done something to you, helped somewhere, served you something, there is a kind of natural obligation that you say, oh, thank you for helping me out in this. But what I'm trying to is control our inner state of kind of develop our inner state of neutrality towards small things which come up. Something in the house is not placed in the same place you will always want to see it. And what happens to that? There is an instant spark of response. Why? Because you have a kind of conditioned mind that this is pleasure for me. Things should be in this place, that is pleasure for me. It's good to be disciplined, it's good to manage house, it's good to have things in their proper place, but obsession, any aspect of our life, whether anything you've done or don't have your hyper response to things. And if that can be controlled, having a neutral response to things. I see sometimes people, like they just have done something very simple, right?
Can I just ask, how do you cultivate that though? How do you develop that neutrality? Because sometimes it's automatic, the tendency to react.
You have to, first thing is awareness as to which area of my life am I getting hyper. Like am I getting, for some it is about the weather, for some it's the food, for some it's about in family, some it is in the job. So we all have our vacuums in which specific area our response is. And at times it's also not just in the mind. We just say it in a abrupt way. So that awareness that where am I getting messy? Am I getting messy with my kids or with my colleagues, or is it with my stuff which I use, or with my spouse, or what is that which makes me restless? In which area am I restlessly responding to things? And if we find those areas and then have an awareness, so whenever you encounter that, just breathe in 3 times and just speak yourself, relax, relax, relax. Or you could pick a mantra, you could just say Om Shanti, or just say Om or Arham. Pick your own mantra at that moment, repeat it 3 times and exhale it. Exhale your stress. We cannot say, okay, mind, you're not going to respond to it anymore now. Because you have to train the mind. It doesn't happen in that instant way. But awareness that this happens to me, or I do it this way, can actually bring you at a point where you know things instantly what's going on. Sometimes Once you've messed it up, then once you've responded, then you realize it. Second stage would come while you're responding, you would realize, okay, this is not good. And early stage, I mean, you would grow there and you would say, even when the spark is ready to come, you realize that this is happening. So you see, we actually could transcend from the way we have a after awareness, after effects of it, or after doing it, or while performing that, or even before that. Gussa aane wala hai, you realize it. And the moment you realize it, you change the place, you drink some water, you do some long breathing, calm down yourself. But you have to do it. And since this is a human nature, it's not like me or you, anyone specific. We all are human beings and in the journey, we need to learn this and we have to train ourselves. So so the whole Vedaniya term is actually the biggest part of our life which we go through. I mean, even like vacation you go. Why do you go for vacation?
Change.
Change. And do you think job is painful?
No, it's fine.
It's fun. But still, do you look forward for vacation?
No.
Oh, you need to go Bansi. Your company should be really happy, Bansi. They should be the best people.
I was like concerned with what we are going to, about totally shutting down emotions and, and my question is, the whole world is developing artificial intelligence, which is non-sentient, yeah? And that's exactly what they're doing. It's totally emotionless. We are basically saying that sentient beings need to become like that. And it raises a question in my mind as to, if that is liberation, then what is...
So then somebody is asking you to be like a dumb robot. No, it's a big difference. The big difference is, the first difference is, as we existing souls, we have the ability of knowing. The non-sentient is just mechanical process robots which have a process typed this thing command, and it goes through that. So for us, the first thing is our ability to know, the awareness. There is an awareness that I'm doing this, there's an awareness I'm not doing this, there's an awareness of growth, there is an awareness of what we need to accomplish. They don't have that. And the second important thing is the state of bliss. Our nature actually is blissful. Our nature itself is, the robot could express joy, but is it really joy? It's artificial intelligence. They really are saying the same thing which you might say, but there is a big difference. There are words there is a command given, and they just have to say it. There is no living experience there, but you are going through that joy or bliss, which as a soul. So when we talk about not getting into the trap of emotion, it's not about artificial intelligence, it's about experiencing the bliss without the conditions of artificial temporary conditions around us. So if the weather is good and then I have to be happy, no. Even if I'm tired, I can smile. Even if I'm exhausted, I can just say, I'm happy. Why? Because that inner state of emotion is actually, some people are always like laughing, smiling, joyful. Why? Because the conditions of emotions which we tie up with our happiness, like, okay, if this condition of emotion works, if I get something, I'm happy. If someone appreciates me, I'm happy. So there is all these tied up conditions for our pleasure and pain. You feel pleasure if the conditions match. This emotional trap. And we've seen people who actually are in very difficult conditions, but then they say, no, and we are fine. The conditions are not appropriate. They are having either financial crisis or problems around or health issues, whatnot. But still they're able to smile, still they're able to live a pleasant life, still they're able to live the fullest because of the ability to not tap into to get out of this emotional track basically. So it's not artificial intelligence, it's about awareness and bliss. And there's a big drastic difference. And the artificial intelligence would actually give a command of shoot, it would do it without knowing what it's doing.
Yeah.
And it would actually help thousands of people to do with something, but it still doesn't know what it's doing. But we as beings actually experience, we have an awareness and bliss which is really unique of the existence of soul itself. Yeah. Okay, so we also will have to complete. So next session will be the final session before we leave for India, and also the final session away we could do a concluding session of the Samudghata itself. So any questions related to overall any of those Samudghata you have, you can bring up. And as usual, we talk about Samudghata some bit and then try get into the other areas to some degree, but that's absolutely fine. Yeah? So we conclude with Mangal part. नमो अरहंताणं नमो सिद्धाणं नमो आयुर्याणं नमो वज्रायाणं नमो लोये सर्वसाहोणं ईसो पंचनमुक्कारो सर्वपापनाशनो मंगलाणं च सर्वेसिं परमं हवै मंगलं चत्तारि मंगलम् अरहन्ता मंगलं सिद्धा मंगलं साहू मंगलं केवली पन्नतो धम्मो मंगलं चत्तारि लोगुत्तमा अरहन्ता लोगुत्तमा सिद्धा लोगुत्तमा साहू लोगुत्तमा केवली पन्नतो धम्मो लोगुत्तमो चत्तारि शरणं प्रवचामि अरहन्ते शरणं प्रवचामि सिद्धे शरणं प्रवचामि साहू शरणं प्रवचामि केवली पन्नतं धम्मं शरणं प्रवचामि विघ्नहरण मंगलकरण स्वाम भिक्षुनो नाम गुणोलक सुमिरन किया सरे अचिंत्य काम अंगूठे अमृतवते लब्धि तड़ा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार मनवांछित फलदातार।
कृतज्ञोस्मि
हम सभाग्य कृतज्ञोस्मि हम सभाग्य कृतज्ञोस्मि हम सभाग्य
Just one small reminder, we have the Jainism course going on. So we had the first lecture in the last month by Atul and his other speakers, but this week we have Bari Samiji's lecture. So Sami ji would talk about Jainism as a religion, life and philosophy or lifestyle. I mean, it's going to be geared towards the main topic of the course itself. So, I mean, I'm not sure if those who missed last time could still join this time, but hope you won't miss it. This is
they have to register with the course.
Yes, now you can try to talk about that.